All right, let's talk about something that can be incredibly frustrating. Have you ever seen a situation where a school just completely fails to protect a kid from serious harm, and you wonder why some families seem to get real justice while others just hit a brick wall? It feels random, right? Well, it's not. There's a very specific legal key that opens a totally different door, and today we're going to show you exactly what it is.
It all comes down to this one question. Imagine two parents, right? Both of their kids are facing the same awful harassment at school. Both of them are doing everything right, reporting it over and over. But one parent's story ends with a tiny settlement and a whole lot of frustration. The other's, a massive victory that changes the entire system. What is the secret?
And this just lays it out perfectly. Look at the difference here. Path A is what most people do, the standard approach. And yeah, it might end with a small settlement, say 25 grand. But then you look at Path B, the game-changing approach. We're talking over $500,000 plus, forcing the school to fix its broken system. I mean, that is a staggering difference. And it all comes down to the legal path you take from the very beginning.
So what exactly are these two paths? Well, it boils down to the huge difference between a normal negligence claim, which you've probably heard of, and a much, much more powerful federal claim called deliberate indifference. And that second one, that's the one that changes everything.
Okay, this table is where you really see the strategic advantage. On the left, with negligence, you're in state court just asking, was the school reasonable? And the only money you can get is to cover your costs. But now, look at the right column. Deliberate indifference is a federal civil rights violation. The standard is higher. You have to prove the school's response was clearly unreasonable. But the payoff is enormous. You can get punitive damages, which are designed to punish the school. And here's the kicker. If you win, the school pays your attorney's fees. I mean, that right there is a total game changer because it means a regular family can actually afford to take on a massive institution.
So this sounds incredibly powerful, I know. You're probably thinking, how on earth do you prove something that sounds so serious? Well, believe it or not, it's been broken down into a surprisingly simple two-part test. Let's walk through it.
And here they are. It's just two things. First, you have to prove the school had actual knowledge. This isn't about what they should have known, it's about what they did know. And second, you have to prove their response was clearly unreasonable. This wasn't just a clumsy mistake, it was so bad, so inadequate that it shows they just didn't care. You have to prove both, not one or the other, both.
So let's dig into that first part. Actual knowledge. What does that really mean? This is so important. It's not enough that there were rumors or a teacher kind of saw something. You have to show that a person with the actual authority to fix the problem, we're talking a principal, a superintendent, got direct notice. This is why putting everything in writing in an email is absolutely critical. You're creating proof.
And then there's part two, the clearly unreasonable response. Look, the bar here is high, and that's on purpose. The question isn't, could the school have done a better job? The question is, was their response so pathetic, so completely off the mark given what they knew, that it basically shows they chose to ignore the danger? It's a response that's so bad, it shocks the conscience. It's essentially no response at all.
Okay, I know this can feel a little abstract, so let's make it real. Let's go back to parent B, the one who had that huge success, and look at the actual evidence they used to prove both parts of this test. This is how it's done.
First up, proving actual knowledge. Look at this. Parent B created a perfect, undeniable paper trail. It starts with emails, then a formal request for an investigation, then a demand for a safety plan. By the time they hit month 5, there were 12 documented reports sent directly to the principal. There is no way the school could ever say, oh, we didn't know, case closed on that part. Okay, next, how do you prove the response was unreasonable? This is a fantastic strategy. It's called a gap analysis. On the left, you list what any reasonable school should have done, and on the right, you list what this school actually did. So instead of a formal investigation, a quick chat. Instead of a real safety plan, some vague promises. The gigantic gap between those two columns, that is your proof of an unreasonable response. But this right here, this is often the absolute knockout punch. Comparative treatment. Parent B found out that when a white student reported harassment just once, the school did everything by the book. Fast investigation, students separated, discipline, a real plan. It was perfect. But for her child, a black student, who had 12 reports, they did basically nothing. This is devastating evidence because it proves the school knew exactly how to handle the situation correctly. They just chose not to for this child. And that is the very definition of deliberate indifference. And when you put all that evidence together, this is the kind of conclusion you get. An expert witness looked at all the facts and said, plain and simple,
This wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just negligence. To get 12 reports of racial harassment and let it get worse, that is deliberate indifference, period.
So let's bring this all home. When you can prove this, what kind of power do you actually unlock? What does it really mean in the real world? Because it's about so much more than just a bigger check. It's a total shift in power and accountability.
For starters, you get what are called punitive damages. In this case, it was an extra $100,000. This isn't money to pay for therapy or tutoring. This is punishment money. It's a fine specifically designed to hurt the institution for consciously disregarding a child's civil rights.
Second, and honestly this might be the most critical piece of the puzzle, the school pays your lawyer. In this case, $150,000. This means a family can hire the best possible legal help and it doesn't come out of their settlement. It also means top lawyers are actually willing and eager to take on these strong cases.
And finally, it's about making sure this never ever happens again. The result wasn't just a payout. It was a consent decree that forced 3 years of federal monitoring on the school. A federal watchdog was put in place to make sure they completely overhauled their policies and procedures. That is real systemic change.
So when you just step back and look at it all, the federal power, the punitive damages, the attorney's fees, the forced systemic change, you can see it's not just a slightly better outcome. It's a completely different universe of accountability. It flips the entire power dynamic.
And that's really the big idea we need to leave with. When a school knows a child is being seriously harmed, and the response is so weak that it's basically no response at all, we have to stop calling that a simple mistake. We have to see it for what it truly is, a violation of that child's federal civil rights. And once you see it that way, everything changes.